Okay, so we're going to go into the Route 53 console in a moment, and we're going to register a domain name, and that will create a hosted zone that we can then use for a couple of lessons later on in this section. As a word of warning, this will cost a bit of money. So registering a domain does cost money. I think I'm going to spend probably $11 depending on the domain suffix I use. And also, we're only going to use this for a couple of lessons in this section. So I want to demonstrate it to you, but it's absolutely optional. You don't have to register your own domain name. If you're just doing this course, it may not be worth it. If you're going to do one of my other courses as well for certifications, then I do actually do the same thing and use registered domains for quite a few lessons. So it might turn out to be a bit more useful if you're going to do those courses as well. So let's head over to the AWS Management Console now. On the AWS Management Console, let's go to Services, head down to Networking and Content Delivery, and here we've got Route 53. There's quite a few different options here. We can see the various services which Route 53 can be used for. So we've got DNS management, traffic management, availability monitoring, and then domain registration. So we'll click Get Started Now under Domain Registration. And we don't have any domains in this account, so I'm going to click on Register Domain. And then we can simply put in a domain name here and see if we can find the domain that we want. So I'm going to try and see if we've got Cloud for Beginners. Click on Check. And it will check .com, but it will give you some other examples as well, because yeah, the .com's not going to be available for this. But we can see there are other options here, and I'm just going to choose the cloudforbeginners.net. So I'm going to add that to my cart. Click on Continue. We need to check that we can get the bucket for the domain name that we're choosing. And the reason being is we're going to host a static website from our bucket using a custom domain name, and for that, the bucket must be the same name as the domain. So let's try and create a bucket called cloudforbeginners.net. And let's check that that's available. And I'm going to create mine in Sydney. And so that one is available, so that's great. So that means that I'm happy now to go and register my domain because I know that I've got this bucket. So I would definitely make sure that you can get the bucket first, just to make sure before you actually register your domain and spend some money. So what I need you to do here is fill out your information, so your name, your email, and so on, and then click on Continue. So that's it. I've registered my domain name. I can click on Close and then click on Go to Domains. And it might take a little while. It won't take 3 days like it warns you here, but it might take a little while for that to come through. So we can see here that we've got cloudforbeginners.net and the domain registration is in progress. It took about 10 or 15 minutes, and now you can see that we actually have a hosted zone. So if we head into our hosted zone, we'll see that in here, this is where we create our record sets. So this is our zone file. And by default, it will come up with the NS records. These are the name server records, which tells which DNS servers AWS have that will respond to queries for this domain name. And there's the start of authority, which is the start of the DNS namespace. In here, we could then create records. So for example, we can create a record set. We can give it an alias if we want to, or a name at the top here. So we could put test, and it would be test.cloudforbeginners.net. And then you can choose your record type. So there are several different types. You've got CNAME, which basically means one domain name gets mapped to another. You have the standard A record, which is where you map a domain name to an IP address. You have the pointer, which does the reverse. It does the IP address back to a domain name. And we have things like the NS, the name server record that I just mentioned before. So there's quite a few different record types supported. We've got mail exchanger as well. So that's for email servers. Let's leave it on A. You can then choose to use an alias. And this is something we'll use later on in this section, where you can then point at load balancers and CloudFront distributions, Beanstalk environments, and so on. So it's a special type of AWS record which you can point straight at AWS services. You then get to put in your values. So this is where you might put your IP address, for example, and a routing policy. So I mentioned these in the last lesson. This is where you can choose the type of policy that you want to create for how you want to route the connections to your applications. So this determines what responses, what records Route 53 returns to clients that are querying it. So that's it for now. We're going to leave this lesson here, and we're going to start looking at CloudFront in the next lesson, and then we'll get back to using Route 53 in the lesson after that.